alle sammen. Da vi klart for kveldens webinar, som ulikt en del andre webinar har ikke noe spesielt tema, bortsett fra at vi stiller oss til rådighet med ekspertise for svar på spørsmål som dere har kommet med, både på forhånd og som dere da eventuelt nå kommer med i løpet av webinaret. For dem som ikke vet så mye om oss, så representerer jeg da Outside Norway og daglig leder der, heter Kjetil, og har jobbet som studieleder i SONOR nå i snart 15 år, og skal nå i dag ta dere gjennom denne økta her, sammen med partnere som vi har, både fra Australia, fra USA og fra Storbritannia. Så dagens agenda, nå går jeg over på engelsk, så jeg satser på at det går bra for alle sammen. So the agenda for today is hopefully the duration will be anything from 1 to 2 hours. It really depends on the questions that you guys have. We have a list of about 15 questions that have been submitted prior to today, but you can also write in all questions in the chat. Feel free to write them in Norwegian, and I can translate because I'll be moderating and providing the questions to the panelists. I'll be shortly going through an introduction about who we are and how we can assist as an organization. You'll see the guys in the picture frames as well, hopefully, but it's Vanessa from Cal State Northridge in LA, US, Matthew from Portland State in the US, Matt from Bond University in Australia, and then Abby from Abby from University of Warwick in the UK. So they represent solid partners of us here at Study Outside Norway and provide a vast array of qualifications in terms of higher education internationally. Been working with students for many, many years and have a lot of insight into the questions that you guys have placed upon us today. So that's going to be really, really good. So just quickly run through Study Outside Norway. What, who, and where? I mean, that's essentially what we need to cover, isn't it? So what? I like to say that we're the matchmaker to universities. So like Tinder or any kind of dating app, that's what we do. We take all the elements that you guys have in terms of your interests, your GPA, your courses, your desires in terms of what you want to study, what kind of climate you want to study in, what kind of environment in terms of your teaching facilities, all those kinds of things, and try and find matches amongst the partners that we have. So because we do that, we have been really, I should say, try and be tough in terms of the university partners that we have selected, because we could probably work with 200-300 university partners in 2-3 weeks. But we try to select partners that we feel confident are able to provide a good, solid education for you guys as Norwegian students. And we feel confident that that's going to be the case. It's definitely the case for these 4. I'm not going to say anything else about the rest of the 54, but for these 4, it's a brilliant bunch. So who? We're 7 counselors at the moment with a blend of international experience with different backgrounds from different countries. So the counselors that you will meet and talk to have been in your shoes. They've been at the threshold of moving abroad, making choices of where to go, what to study, and all those kinds of things. So it's a blend of people being in the US, Australia, the Netherlands, China, different parts of the world, in the UK as well. So a lot of different types of feedback from the counselors that you can work with. So we have an office in Oslo and in Trondheim, but definitely I would assume that a lot of you guys don't live in Oslo or Trondheim. So we're available on Skype, Zoom, phone, email. We'll come to your school if you want to do that. If you want to talk to your counselors about bringing us in to give our presentations, we'll do that. And we're free of charge, no strings attached. You can ask us any kind of questions that you have, and then decide that you want to do something totally different. That's perfectly fine. As I said, we feel confident in terms of the university partners that we do have. And if you also find that some of these partners that we do have are institutions that are of interest for you, we will help you free of charge with everything from A to Z through your application process until you depart. And we're here even after you've started as well, even though the universities will have a much larger kind of blanket of support systems for you at that point in time, but we're still here. And some of the time that's good as well, because you need probably need some support in terms of your funding. There might be some issues in terms of that from a Norwegian side, whether that be funding, whether that be insurance or anything like that. So we're here to help you even after you've started as well. So as I said, today we have with us 4 of our partners. I've put your guys' details up here as well. So if your students are listening to this, want to shoot these guys an email with specific questions about the institutions, I'm sure you're free to do that as well. I haven't asked these guys about it, but I just did it anyway. So there you go. Abby says that's good at least. So that looks good. Why don't we do a quick introduction first, and we'll keep it to this list here. So Matt, Bond, Abby, and then Vanessa and Matthew going in that order, about 5 minutes each, and then we'll start hitting the questions. So important, guys, when you're listening to this, if you have questions at this point in time, just start writing them into the chat, and we'll do it one by one once we start get going. Okay? And then I'll stop my share, and then Matt, you can share your presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm hoping you can hear me loud and clear. As Shettle had said, my name is Matt Stubbard, and I represent Bond University. So I'm going to spend just the next 4 or 5 minutes just quickly going through and hopefully allow you to visualize Bond University. My role within the university is I assist students and partnerships and institutions in Europe, as well as a little bit in the USA as well. And I do everything sort of that Shettle mentioned his team did, as well as I work with Shettle's team to really help students who are looking to study in Australia, and in particular Bond University. So hopefully today I'll be able to help you with some questions you may have about not only Bond University, but about Australia in general as a study destination. So up on the screen, you'll see just a moving picture of Bond University. So Bond University is located on the sunny Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. Just the next screen allows me to zoom in. So those of you who may have been to Australia, some of you may have not. This is just a little geography for you. That's a little tiny map of Australia, but as I hit it again, you should be able to zero in into Queensland, which is a large state within Australia, and a little bit further right down in there into the Gold Coast. Okay, and that's where Bond's located. So just a little bit on the Gold Coast as a destination. There's amazing cities to consider and amazing regional areas to consider within Australia. The Gold Coast is Australia's 5th largest city. It is the fastest growing city in Australia, approaching a population of about 600,000. It's a really interesting city and a city under transformation. And what I mean by that is it's always been Australia's sort of top tourist destination. We think of Sydney and Melbourne, which are amazing cities, but the Gold Coast with its climate, the beaches, sort of has something for everyone. But what's interesting is a lot of companies, large companies and firms from some of those larger cities are now moving into the Gold Coast. They're seeing it as a cheaper option to sort of set up shop. So that's really changing the face of the Gold Coast and giving a lot of opportunity for people for work, as well as a fantastic place for students to study. So you can see the beaches there, beautiful climate, even in your winter time, which is their summertime, so everything's a little bit backwards. But even in July, when you're enjoying your summer in Norway, that's winter time on the Gold Coast, and it's still plus 20, plus 25 degrees every single day Celsius. So a beautiful destination, beautiful climate, very safe environment to consider. The university, as I mentioned, Bond University, there's just a little clip of the university, and I'm only just going to just scoot over these quite quickly. We have a capped institution of 5,000 students, half are international and half are domestic. We have a range of programs, which I won't go into detail now, but you can see quickly on that slide that we have a faculty or a school of health science and medicine with a range of programs in health science. We have a business school, lots of different business opportunities. Society and design, which is a larger area in your arts, humanities, creative media, as well as architecture, a law faculty, and then Bond University College, which may be relevant for some of you, but it's more of a language school and also an opportunity for sort of diploma programs which feed into our bachelor's program. I guess one key thing is we do have the smallest class sizes in the country. So we do have a very personalized education at Bond, which is one of the very big differences. So it's really focusing on your entire experience within the university and doing it in a very personal manner. So all your different social things are big at the university. So a lot of opportunity to be involved. We really want your student experience to be exceptional. and Bond has been the highest rated university in Australia for student experience for the last 15 years. So whether that's sports, whether that's an association, social group, whether it's whatever it is you're into, we have it at the university. We really want you to be involved and enjoy your experience, whether you're there for a full degree study or simply for one semester to enjoy that experience in Australia at Bond. Lots of student services, which are key for when you're looking to study abroad or at any institution, even in Norway, making sure that you have the different things to cater for your needs. So we really feel that we do a good job in making sure we have those for students. And finally, just sort of showing you a few visualizations of our facilities as I wind up here. That's the entrance to the library. Very modern. This is the multi-purpose learning center where you'll do some of your studying, spending time with students, using individual room space to work on your assignments. That's a business classroom. So again, with those small class sizes, it's really focused on ensuring that you know people in your class and your academics. That's the architecture building. So again, just very nice facilities for you to enjoy. That's a replica of the Supreme Court of Australia for students studying law. So that's available for students to practice every day when they're doing their study. Film and television is a big one and also quite a popular one in Norway. So lots of film studios. Sport is big at Bond, so an opportunity to be active in that lifestyle on the Gold Coast. So whether it's Pilates, boxing, whatever it is you're into, you can be very active and be involved from day to day. Basketball courts, squash courts, tennis courts, sorry, moving quickly here, rugby pitch, soccer pitch, Olympics size outdoor heated pool. So again, just in the middle of, as we approach winter in Norway, you can probably see this is a pretty appetizing spot to consider in Australia. So hopefully we have accommodation and dining as well. You have to be able to stay there. It's a long commute. So we have on-campus accommodation as well as off-campus to assist you with food outlets. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. And as I said, hopefully that will stir up an opportunity to consider Australia for some of your questions, not just Bond University, but Australia as a whole, climate-wise, and how I may be able to help you with some of those questions today.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Can take a breather, Matt. Abby?
Thank you. That's a brilliant introduction to Bond University. So I'm going to talk to you about Warwick University now. So in 5 minutes, I'm going to try and skip through these. So my name's Abby. If you didn't catch that earlier with my introduction, I'm a student recruitment executive, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I can only advise about Warwick. If you have any questions about studying in the UK, coming from Norway or elsewhere, I'm happy to answer that. And just to give a brief kind of introduction to me, I used to work in the undergraduate admissions team and also the business school. So if you have any very specific questions about those things, I'm also happy to help you with that. So here you can see a bit of an overview. This is the key take homes really about Warwick University. We're based in the UK, we're a campus university, but we're also a very research-led institution and research-driven. So that means that your academics are really at the top of their game in research, and it really filters down into the rest of your course. With that, we offer flexible single joint or multidisciplinary degree options. We're hugely career focused. In the UK, we're the top third university that's approached by the top 100 employers for graduates in the UK. And we have a hugely international student community. So out of 27,000 in our student community, we have about 3,500 from Europe and associated states. At the moment, I think we have 31 students from Norway, so you can join that community if you come to our university. So in terms of where we are, so you're probably thinking, okay, the UK, how far away are you from London, which is a question we get a lot. We're about an hour train ride from London. We're very central in the UK, in the heart of Coventry City and the surrounding Warwickshire areas. So we actually have a student-focused campus, which is student-built. It's just on the edge of Coventry City. So it's very, very convenient, especially if you're moving from another country. So you've got everything at your fingertips. These are a few photos of campus. I picked these to kind of give a bit of variety, but also show how green our campus is as well. So just flicking through these are some of our rankings at the moment, and you might not be paying much attention to these. You might want to be looking for the overall student experience, or maybe focus on a particular course that you're going to be studying. Whatever it is that's important for you, you can look at rankings, but you can also look at the student experiences as well, if rankings aren't as important to you. We are, having said that, we are highly ranked, and I think that really links into the fact that we're at the top of our game, being a research-led institution. As well as the Lanarkson funding, which you can get if you study at Warwick, we actually have launched a new global scholarship. So this might be something that you haven't heard of yet, so do check it out online if you are not a self-funded student. So these are just some of the courses that you can study at Warwick. Like I said, we do actually offer joint degrees. I'll show you a few examples of those later. But this is just a few of our departments to give you a flavour of what you can actually study at Warwick. And I did mention earlier, I have a lot of knowledge about how to apply through the UCAS system, but also just about personal statements, what to include on your application, what not to include. This is a really helpful guide on our website about how to apply. So do check it out if that's what you're wanting to find out today. So we've actually updated our Norwegian entry requirements on our website recently. So this page here, I don't know if you can see the link at the bottom there. That's a really useful page for undergraduate entry. So I'm aware some of you might be looking for postgraduate entry. That link can give you that information as well. But this is a bit of a summary of the typical entry requirements and the A-level equivalencies. You might be thinking, okay, I want to study in a completely different country, but actually I want to do some study abroad experience as part of my degree, or maybe an integrated placement year. These are some of the courses which have a compulsory element. We actually have the option to add on the study abroad option or integrated industry placement to any of our degrees, but these are some that have a compulsory element. And I mentioned, we do a lot of joint degrees. These are a few examples if you're interested in politics and business at Warwick. You may be surprised, you can actually study degree choices to do with business and engineering. So here's a flavour of some courses. And I did mention I used to work in the business school, so I have put a slide together here about the different flagship courses that we offer in business and management at undergraduate level. If you're interested in saving the world and solving the big problems at the moment and answering the big questions, we do offer a course called Global Sustainable Development, which really encapsulates those three key themes there that I've got on that slide. So that might be something that you haven't thought of studying. And with that degree, there is lots and lots of study abroad options at one of our partner universities in Malaysia and Australia. And we also offer great work placement opportunities as well. So just to round up really quickly, these are some of our typical graduate employers for our graduates if they're studying business at Warwick. If you're doing an arts and humanities degree, this might be a typical employer after your studies at university. And if thinking of studying an arts and humanities degree, these are some of the career pathways that our students have progressed onto. We actually have loads of student societies at Warwick. You might pay particular attention to the Nordic Society there. This is just a bit of a flavour of some of the societies that we have. We actually have over 250 student-led societies, but we also have lots and lots of sports societies as well. That's our brand new Sports and Wellness Hub. And as well as that, we have our Warwick Arts Centre here. Some of our students either rehearsing or performing in our arts centre. I think my time may have just gone out there. So just a bit of an overview on the types of accommodation that we offer. It's all on campus as a priority for first years. We also have Leamington and Coventry for the second, third and fourth year off campus. You can explore our campus easily, either on bike or you can walk around campus. It's hugely accessible. We've got everything there that you need. If you have any questions, you can either ask me or my colleagues as well on that screen. So sorry for going over there a little bit. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to the next presenter.
Yes, thank you for that. I love the fact that the Nordic Society's logo is a polar bear.
Same.
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Vanessa now from Cal State Northridge.
All right, let me see if I can share my screen now. Here we go. All right, so thank you so much for having me today. Just on a quick personal note here, I was myself a former international student years ago. So I've been on this journey that you are right now, trying to assess location, place, program, and what suits you better. I came to the US about 20 years ago now, and I've been working in this field for quite a long time. And so I do have that kind of a bug for study abroad too, and I've always had. I'm originally from Brazil, so just an FYI. My name is Vanessa. I am the Director of International Partnerships at CSUN, and I'm also the Deputy Senior International Officer for the campus. So I'm happy to be here today, and hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions you have about CSUN and studying in the US overall, and along with my colleague that is representing the US here as well. So a little bit about CSUN. We are part of the CSU system. The California State University system is one of the largest university systems in the United States. I think it's the largest in the United States and one of the largest in the world. We do have 23 campuses all in California. CSUN, which is my campus, we are in Los Angeles. We are in the north part of Los Angeles, about 40 minutes from downtown LA and Santa Monica Beach and Beverly Hills and so on and so forth. We are about 20 and plus minutes from Hollywood and the movie studios. One fun fact about Los Angeles, we always go by minutes instead of miles or kilometers. So down there you have kilometers, but it all depends on traffic. So basically when we talk about it, we don't say X amount of kilometers, we say X amount of time and give and take traffic. So our campus is really well located, and in Northridge, the entire community evolves around the university and the campus life, as we are a quite large university campus. And I'm going to move this to a little bit here. We are quite a large university campus with about 40,000 students enrolled, close to 3,000 international students on campus from about 100 different countries. Frequently, we are ranked by the U.S. News and World Report as among the top 25 top public schools in the U.S. We do have about 100 majors on campus, 60 majors of undergraduate, and about 70 different master's degree programs. Very few doctoral programs. But we have a very engaging campus life and student life with over 300 clubs and organizations in our campus that I like to joke, but it is true. We are, as a campus, bigger than Disneyland in size. So it's quite an interesting campus to navigate and kind of experience on your own. We also do have, for standards of a public university in the US, a very low student faculty ratio of about 24 and class average size of 27 students, which again, for a large public university in the United States, it's quite a good class size average. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of where we are and what we offer. We place a lot of effort and importance in student life and student leadership. Our basically approach of the university is very holistic. We look into the students both academically, socially, physically, mentally, and we offer support around all those areas to ensure the students have a great experience and a support across the university in all those levels. Our student recreation center, this picture here on the left, has everything from rock climbing wall to indoor cooper to gyms. We have 9 swimming pools on campus. A fun fact, we're very environmentally friendly. Most of our buildings are Gold LEED or Platinum LEED certified. In our gym, just a fun fact as well, when you are exercising in your treadmill or in your elliptical machines, you're generating the electricity for the building. So it's just a few aspects of CSUN and the importance we place on that. We do have oasis on campus with a Japanese meditation garden, a sleeping pod, which is very popular with international students. The top picture on the right corner, it's a sleeping pod that you can go in and take a nap during the day in our oasis if you want to rest between classes or finals, and so on and so forth. We do offer a health center on campus, a very strong advising hub where every single student that comes to our campus go through an advisor that can help them navigate academic classes. We also have a great student housing on campus, apartment style shared, double occupancy. Every apartment, it's 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room share among 4 students, 2 in each bedroom. They're fully furnished, includes everything, laundry, parking facilities. We offer RA student support all the time. There is a housing community center in the center, dining halls. We have everything on campus from Burger King to Panda Express to Freudian Sip, Starbucks type of coffee, Subway, bank. It's like a mini city on campus, and everything is very safe and convenient and walking distance to your classroom. So living on campus, it's a very attractive option for international students. Again, with swimming pool and volleyball courts and all of that. Besides our regular undergraduate and graduate degree programs, we do offer a semester abroad program called Semester at CSUN for a year or 6 months. Very popular with Norwegian students. We do have a student success pathway for the entry into the university, and we offer quite a large number of professional certificate programs and package programs. And we have a very, very strong history on virtual and online certificate programs and master degree programs for many years, and very well known in the US for that capacity. So just to sense there. And I'm going to be brief, so I'm not going to take more than my 5 minutes. And here we have my colleague as well, as Amy mentioned. You can reach out to me on my voice. We work very closely together with SONOR and their team on supporting you through your process. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Vanessa. And then I hand it over to Matthew.
Hello out there. My name is Matthew Pipert. I'm with Portland State University. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to keep mine a little short so that we can get to the Q&As. But if you haven't heard of Portland, we are on the west coast of the United States. We are the biggest city in the state of Oregon. You might have heard of the NBA Portland Trail Blazers. A lot of people know Portland from basketball. We're also home to Nike. But it's a really beautiful city. We're between the mountains and the ocean. People are very friendly here. And the city is well known for being a great food city, great coffee culture, and really great art and music scene. I'm gonna switch slides here real quick. We are a large school. We're in the middle of a city. So if you're looking for that sort of traditional college town experience, we are not that. If you want to be in the middle of a major US city, we are that. So we have about 26,000 students from all 50 US states, and we have an international student population of about 1,200 students from all around the world. I think it's about 90 different countries, including a handful of Norwegians. It's just an incredibly global space. I think it's one of the most global spaces in the entire state of Oregon. So as I mentioned, we are in the middle of downtown. great public transportation. We're literally minutes away from restaurants, bars, breweries, live music, museums, parks, cafes, food carts, everything you could possibly want. We have on-campus housing. We have a pretty vibrant student life. We have more than 200 student clubs. So whatever you're interested in outside of the classroom, you can find your niche here. And we're also a Division I school, so that means we are the top level of athletics in at the university level. Another great benefit of being in Portland is the connection that our school has with the multinational companies that call Portland home. I mentioned Nike before. Intel is located here. They hire a lot of our graduates. We've got Daimler Trucks, we've got Columbia Sportswear, and then we're very close to Seattle. They're almost like sister cities just down the road from us, and a lot of Seattle, a lot of Seattle companies like Microsoft, Boeing, Amazon, they also tend to hire a lot of our students. We do have great success with job placement rates, and the average salary for a PSU graduate after they graduate is about 50,000 US, so not too bad. We offer almost anything you could possibly want to study. I could go on and on about our many programs, but I'll just highlight a few. We have an amazing School of Business. You can study finance, marketing, accounting, all the traditional concentrations. I will point out we have a supply and logistics management concentration that is extremely popular right now and highly in demand. We have a great College of Engineering and Computer Science. So if you want to study engineering, we have civil, mechanical, environmental, computer, electrical, really any of the engineering fields. And then for all you graphic design students out there, we are one of the best graphic design programs in the entire country. And Portland is known to be a design city with its own aesthetic, its own style, and a really great place for talented graphic designers to study. Here are our freshman admission requirements if you're interested in applying. So I'll just narrow it down to Norway here. Basically, if you get an average of 4 on your Vitnemål exams, you will be admitted. And in fact, if you do 4 exams and you get a 4 on all 4, if that makes sense, we can actually give you advanced credit, 36 university credit, so you are not starting from 0. So we reward you for the good work that you do in Norwegian secondary school. You'll see that we have our English proficiency scores here, but one nice thing is that if you do work with SONOR, then we give SONOR, students who come through SONOR the opportunity to write a short personal statement instead of doing the IELTS or TOEFL or DET or PET. So, but those are options as well. We do have scholarships for international students. We actually increased the scholarship for fall 2021. So you can earn up to $10,000 in scholarship just based purely on your grades alone. And then we have an additional scholarship if you choose to apply to our honors college, and can talk about that later maybe. So thanks so much for your time. I look forward to talking more with you during the Q&A session. And this is our contact information. And I will pass it back to Kjetil for the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank all you guys for that introduction. I just want to point out that I got Matthew's email wrong in the presentation. So I'll be sending all you students his correct email if I'm sure you want to reach out with some questions directly to him as well. So as I said at the beginning, we have about 15 questions that were submitted up front. So I'll start at the top, and there's a fair few questions in the chat as well. And feel free to come up with follow-up questions as well in the chat, and we'll take that on the stride. The first one is a good one because it kind of relates to differences between institutional institutions and different countries in the way that you review higher education. And we can start Australia, UK, US, going that order, I guess. So the question is, if I want to study sciences, would I have to done sciences in high school? The same question relates also to creative studies. So Matthew talked about graphic design and the art subjects in that sense. So Matt, can you go first?
Certainly. Thank you, Cheryl. I'll start by saying some courses are going to be depending on the individual university. So I'll speak about Bond, but I'll also speak generally about Australia as well. When you're looking at the sciences and you're looking at, there'll be some programs that you can come into that you do not need a science base. There'll be other ones that you definitely need to have some sort of basis. So for example, if you're coming into the health science area and you're looking at a biomedical science or an exercise sports science or something in those areas, you typically require some sort of chemistry, some either biology, and in some instances, maths as well. So again, it could be dependent on the institution that you're applying for, or as general. So there's not necessarily a general rule. You can certainly make assumptions, but some universities will have different pathways or options to take those subjects when you first commence. So what I would recommend, certainly from an Australian perspective and a Bond perspective, is if you're looking for a science particular area and you do not have those perhaps subjects that we call prerequisites or subjects that are needed, you can check that information out with SONOR, but I would also ask the institution, because often they have an option for you to be able to take those in your first semester and then move into that program. So it doesn't necessarily slow you down and you're still going to get the outcome you want in the end. It just may be an extra subject or something that you can do during that time. Looking at the creative side of things, there tends to be, certainly for us, less prerequisites or knowledge that's known. Architecture, sometimes they will want a bit of a portfolio to see that you have a genuine interest in creative and within the sort of architecture area. But a lot of the sort of other creative areas, not required to have any sort of background in those. But again, it would be a checking each institution.
Thank you. Abby, from a UK perspective?
Hi, thank you for that question. It's a really good point, and I will echo what Matt said, that, in the UK, we won't have, one rule fits all. Each course is very individual to the university. At Warwick, for example, we have courses which, you definitely need to study biology or maybe like an applied science. Or we do have courses where they're related to the science department, for example, health and medical sciences, where we can accept one of the science requirements as being, studying psychology or even studying physical education. So it really, really varies. Don't, assume that, a high-ranked institution will always have very specific high and required subjects. High entry requirements as well. There's a lot of variation within a university with entry requirements. And again, yes, with more creative subjects, there is slightly more flexibility sometimes. But to be honest, generally, from a UK perspective, again, it depends where you're applying to. You're going to have some really prestigious, specific art courses from colleges, whether it be in London or whether it be maybe a dance institute, across the UK. Each university almost has sometimes their own specialisms, and they'll be highly ranked in maybe different departments. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. My recommendation is do your research. So figure out what's really important to you, whether it be the course, whether it be the overall university experience, and look at the different search engines, either on UCAS, SONOR, or just looking at the individual universities themselves and what courses they offer. Because even if you're not doing, for example, a specific science subject that's needed, there may be a related course which doesn't require a specific science subject, for example. I think the other thing to mention is that in the UK, you might be interviewed by some universities, you might not for others. For the more creative courses, you're highly likely to be interviewed or at least submit a portfolio. So With that respect, they're slightly more subjective with admission into their courses over a science-related subject. Thank you.
Sounds good. Matthew, can you take the lead on this for the US?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are about 5,000 different schools here, but I will say that generally speaking, you start off with a fresh slate at most schools in the US, meaning that you don't need to have taken specific classes in secondary school in order to enter a particular program. Again, this is generally speaking. There are exceptions to that. For my own school, Portland State University, we have the same admission requirements for all majors. And in fact, you don't even have to choose a major until your second year. So I guess Vanessa can add a little bit to that, but I will say that there are specific majors at Portland State University that have a sort of bar at the end of your second year that you have to clear in order to advance to your third and fourth year. So programs like architecture, graphic design, art practice, computer science, and music. All of these have either an audition or a portfolio or some sort of exam that you have to take at the end of your second year in order to advance to your third and fourth years. But coming into school, the field is wide open for most schools, and you're welcome to begin studying any subject that you'd like. And Vanessa, I don't know if you want to add anything to what I said.
I think you were spot on, and I think the easy way to look into that is in the US, usually the first year or so, it's more general education courses that you take anyway, and that's one of the reasons why very often Matthew was saying that you can come into the university as an undergraduate student and an undeclared major, meaning you basically coming in as an undergraduate student and you haven't chosen your major yet. And then you can build up on that. The minute that you start choosing your majors or your minors, or another benefit of the US system, you can do a double major, or you can do a major and a minor, which is very unique in a way. And when you're looking into large institutions, you can do that even on a multidisciplinary choices. You can do a major in business with a minor in theater, for example. That's a choice you can have as well. It's just the way that the academic advisors will come into place, and then will help you build your curriculum and ensure you're taking the right set of courses. Another benefit that I may want to throw it in here is, let's assume you want to do a certain set of courses that are required for your major or your minor, and they might not be offered on that specific semester at that specific campus, and they may be a prerequisite to a different university. That's when the US has also the community colleges that can come and help build those general education course sets, and you can do a concurrent enrollment. You can be enrolled in your university and maybe take one course that it's not offered there at a community college to make up for that prerequisite either over the summer or over the semester as a concurrent enrollment. So I think the easy way to say that is the US is a pretty flexible system in terms of getting into the university, specifically into your first year. After that, it depending on your path, it becomes a little bit more complicated, and some majors might require portfolio and other things. But I think you answered it well. I don't know if I added to it, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for providing good answers to that. Another question, we can go by the same order again, I guess, is will I be able to go on a study abroad semester whilst fully enrolled at your institution? So Matt, can you go first?
Sure. So if I understood correct, that would be a student considering coming to Bond University for a full degree of study, and then throughout that time in Australia, you'd like to go and study at another institution. Absolutely. And we encourage that. And in fact, you'll find that most universities in Australia will offer that. We all, but for speaking Bond specifically, we are a very international institution. So when you do come in, you'll have to do a minimum of 2 semesters at our institution. To show that you've sort of found your feet and that you're comfortable and that you're progressing well with your academics and your study. And at that, you can apply to go on an exchange or a study abroad semester to one of our partners. We've got several of them all over the world. So you could turn around and come right back to Norway if you really wanted to. But you could pick pretty much anywhere on the globe outside of Antarctica, and you could look at an option to go and study a semester during your time. In fact, if you could make it fit within your degree, you could potentially do more than one. But it really just depends on what you're studying and what you're being advised that you need to complete within your degree, because it's all about the subject matching coming back. But yes, absolutely. And in fact, we support every bond student with a $2,000 Australian grant in hopes that goes towards their airfare in a non-COVID world, that you could go and enjoy that experience at another institution around the world.
Thank you, Matt. Abby?
Thank you. And it's a really good question, actually, and I think one which is really popular with our students. In the UK, it might be called lots of different things. It might be called a study abroad year, an intercalated year, you know, a year out, a sandwich year, which is also a term used. But you know, certainly it's an option which a lot of UK students or UK institutions, you know, do. At Warwick, you know, we have many partner institutions. You know, I echo what the panel will probably say, you know, lots all over the world. But it is, in the UK, it's something that each university will review every year, basically, unless they have a special contract with university abroad. What's really good is that because you will be doing a placement year as part of your degree, it's therefore classed as a compulsory part of your study. So if you're worried about Brexit, for example, how that might affect where you can study abroad, if you can do a work placement as part of your study abroad year, which is an option at Warwick. You can do either 50-50 of the two, or you can do a whole study abroad year, or you can do a whole placement year as well. If you are worried about Brexit affecting it, because it's compulsory, essentially you will have the same rights and opportunities as all of our other students. But yes, certainly, you know, we really encourage students to take a study abroad year if that suits their preferences. You know, it's not only the wider options of modules that you could take at another university and broaden your horizons that way. You know, you'll may potentially be learning a different language, which, you know, really will make you stand out in the crowd in terms of employability after university. And it's a really good way to build your CV whilst you're still a student. So certainly, yes, you can absolutely do a study abroad year or placement year whilst you're studying at Warwick, and many other UK universities also offer this. So just check out each institutional website for each partner institution where you'll be able to do your study abroad year. So it's very much a case of doing your research again.
Thank you. Vanessa, you take the lead, and Matthew, you can jump in with some added insight there as well.
Happy to do so. Yes, the same is true here at CSUN. As a matter of fact, we do. You have several options that we offer on our campus for study abroad once you are matriculated on an undergraduate degree or even a graduate degree program on campus. You could do the regular 6-month study abroad through CSUN and one of our partner institutions. You can do the 6 months to a year of the what we call CSUIP, which is it's part of the international programs of the entire CSU system, which will have the system as well has many partners worldwide. And as a CSUN student, you are eligible to join the CSUIP programs as well. You can go on what we call faculty-led short-term study abroad programs, depending on the course and the subject matter you are studying. It may be optional, or it may be even a requirement that you go on a faculty-led 2-week, 3-week short-term study abroad as part of your curriculum. And we also offer what we call COIO, the collaborative online study abroad that sometimes is incorporated into your classroom. And so depending on the class you're taking, you're also doing some collaborative online study abroad with a partner institution overseas as part of your day-to-day 6 months academic coursework. So we do as offerings, we do showcase those study abroad officers through our study abroad office on campus, as well as we run 2 large fairs on a yearly basis, one in each semester, to promote the opportunities to our students of what's available for study abroad. So.
Yeah, so the answer, can international students do study abroad while at Portland State University? The answer is yes, and we encourage it. We have more than 200 programs in about 80 different countries, so it's a really great idea. And I would say that for the majority of US schools, that is an option. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that sounds good. So the next question, I'm just going to warn you guys when I ask the questions, I'll pull up your emails on the screens and have that as a backdrop so people can write you an email as well. So I'm not being, I'm not stealing your time in terms of that, but I'm just trying to be assistful in terms of that. So the next question is about internships. Are there any internships opportunities whilst I'm a student? And we can go Australia, UK, US in the same order again, I guess.
Great, thanks. Terrific question. I'll start by saying there's probably some of you that are looking for an individual semester abroad, study abroad semester where you're looking to go. For a Bond University, if you're looking to come for a study abroad semester for one single semester, unfortunately, there aren't any internships. There's certainly the opportunity that you could work through our Career Development Center to find a place that you could work alongside and volunteer. And of course, you could work alongside your experience as well with your Australian student visa. But as far as internships for a study abroad single semester, unfortunately, that's not available. When you look at full degree study, where you're coming in to potentially stay longer, obviously, to finish an entire degree, then there's definitely opportunities for internships. And for our university, if you are interested in doing further research, and I know you came here to get it, but if you do have time, look up our Career Development Center within the university, and you'll see great opportunities for students when they're there to get opportunity to be involved in internships across whatever field that you're studying. And each faculty or school area of that particular focus also has a department that helps with internships. So there's sort of your internships that are available for students as part of your program study. So for example, I did see a question up there about international sort of resort tourism management and things like that. So for example, at Bond University, a big one within that program is a 400 hours or a certain hour component that you have to work within the tourism industry. So that's part of your internship, but it's also built into your program. It's a requirement. Whereas there's other internships you can simply apply for that are external to the institution, which will certainly help you with, whether it be an opportunity to work in a film studio in New York or something to that regard. So there's some that are placed within your program, not all your programs, and then there's some that are external that we can certainly assist you with to apply.
Thank you. Yes, certainly you can absolutely do an internship whilst you're studying, either in your holidays or as part of your degree. I think I touched on it earlier with the study abroad question. There's lots of different terminologies. We have intercalated year, for example. Some universities call it student mobility as well. So as I mentioned earlier, you can do a whole year, so you're adding a whole extra year to your degree study in the UK, where you can do either study abroad, you can do a whole year in industry, so an internship, or you can split it 50-50. In terms of the support that you can get to actually find that and prepare you for maybe interviews or assessment centres, our careers team can help you either on a one-to-one basis. We also have workshops. And something actually to mention, during the coronavirus crisis, a lot of our students have been doing remote working internships. So you might be thinking, that has been written off during the pandemic, but a lot of companies are offering our students that whilst they can't actually be in an office and have face-to-face mentorship. there's a lot of opportunities for our students to do remote working internships. So you're still, contributing to a body of work, maybe a project in the company or some research as well, which you can either put towards your degree at Warwick, but also put on your CV. So there's also that opportunity as well. Hopefully that won't be a problem. The coronavirus pandemic won't be a problem, for next year, but that's really how we've adapted. In terms of where you can do your internship, it's really up to you. It depends if you want to do it in the summer holidays, so either summer holidays, Easter holidays, and have a very short-term internship of weeks instead of months, or you can actually add on, like I said, an extra year of study, which is a compulsory element of your degree. You'll have credits for completing that internship year, and you'll have to do a reflective module in your following year on campus. So typically, if you want to do a year internship as part of your degree at Warwick, you're doing that in your third year of study out of 4, or you also have the option to just do internships in the summer. And both options are popular with students, both are valuable for your CV and career building whilst you're a student. Thank you.
Perfect. Matthew, can you take the lead on this one?
Sure. Yeah. Internships are really a fantastic thing to do while you're in school, especially in your 3rd and 4th year in the US. Highly encouraged to do it. For international students, there's something in the US called CPT, Curricular Practical Training. You don't have to remember that, but what it means is that if there's an internship that's required for your particular major, there's an opportunity, and if that's paid, there's an opportunity to get paid as an international student by that company that or organization that you work for. But and that's common across all US schools. So if there's a built-in internship within the major, then there's a possibility to get paid for that and actually work in the field while you're a student. One nice thing about PSU is that every single student, in order to graduate, has to either do an internship or a community project. So most students choose to do an internship, and it's a really fantastic way to work in the field at an organization or business in Portland or in the Portland region. And Vanessa, I'll kick it over to you.
I think you said it all. I mean, for the US, as an international student, it just becomes a little tricky because you do have to be in compliance with immigration and CPT, and you need an authorization in order to be able to do an internship that is paid. You can do unpaid internships, and that it becomes a little bit easier. But it is fully encouraged, and the Career Center and services on campus can help and support and in not only securing an internship, finding an internship, but also making sure your documentation is in place and ready for the internship. You just really have to follow immigration policies when it comes to that, but it's doable, and it's very encouraged. Students are encouraged to do so.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for your answers. And then there's a question of when should I start applying for the different countries? And the reality is, I'll leave it to you guys in a couple of minutes, but reality is we want to be in touch with as many students as possible so that we can get ahead of all these things, because we know the admission deadlines, we know all the criteria. So that's what me and the rest of my team is working with students in terms of setting up those things, so you're not missing out on deadlines or anything like that. So important part for me to kind of note there, but I'll leave it to Matt to talk about a little bit from Bond's perspective, and we'll do the same round again.
Absolutely. Terrific question. And I just reiterate what Shetel had said, especially for Australia, because One thing I didn't mention in my particular quick presentation is we're one of a few small institutions that run on a different schedule. So I think when you look at what you're used to in Norway, where you start school usually August, September time, and then you have another semester in the new year. But in Australia, typically university starts end of February, early March would be your first semester. So that's at the end of the summer holiday in Australia. You'd run your first semester, you'd get a short break, and you'd go back again in July. So Bond University, and there are a few other ones, we actually start on your sort of Northern Hemisphere timetable. We start in September, we have a semester in January, and we actually run a trimester system. So we have 3 semesters per year, which another one in May. So I think, I don't want to go into too much detail because that's where the expertise of SONOR can help you. But our sort of admissions timeframe is a little bit different than the majority of institutions in Australia. So I would really use the services of someone like SONOR who have that expertise that can help you. But you certainly, what I will say is, you certainly want to leave enough time for things that you may have never thought of, like a student visa, finding accommodation in another country. So there are some things that are going to take some time, not necessarily the actual assessment of your application perhaps, but it's just the finding out all the information and making sure you have things in place to make your journey a lot easier for you. So again, the first point of contact for you should be to contact SONOR because they can ease that stress for you and do that all for you. Thank you. Abby?
Thank you. So in the UK, it's a little bit different. We have something called UCAS, which if you're signed up to SONOR and looking at studying in the UK, you definitely have heard of, which stands for University and Colleges Admission Service. So they really dictate what deadlines you have when applying to UK universities. So in terms of deadlines, it really depends on what you want to study and where you're applying to. And the reason why I say that is if you're looking to apply to Oxford or Cambridge or any other university for a dentistry, veterinary or medical degree, then you have a really early deadline of the 15th of October. And that doesn't really change every year. So, whatever the day of the week it is that year. But the absolute main deadline for all other courses, and if you're not applying to Oxford or Cambridge, will be the 15th of January. So that means that you will get equal consideration with all other applicants if you apply by that deadline. If you're applying to a high-ranking institution where they have quite oversubscribed courses, then I would definitely recommend applying by that 15th of January deadline because potentially the course that you want to apply to after that deadline may close. So that's the only kind of caveat that I have with regards to that. However, as an international student or as a student, if you're not sure in January or earlier where you want to apply to, you can still apply after the 15th of January, but it really depends on the availability of places on the courses in the UK. Some may have closed. For example, courses at Warwick that close pretty early are some like the economics courses, computer science courses, maths, business school courses sometimes. So to be honest, it does depend every year. My main advice would be applying by the 15th of January. That's the really, really key deadline. Thank you.
Vanessa, you take the lead, and then Matthew will jump in.
I can, but I think you said it all. SONOR is really the place you should go to because it really does depend on programs. And I'll give you an example of CSUN. We are a semester-based institution, so we do have intakes every January and August. And application deadlines in the Cal State and CSU system, they're pretty much set with beginning and end date for both. But depending on programs you are applying for. So if you're applying for your study abroad only, it's a different application deadline and it's a different process. If you're applying as a graduate student, which is a great example here, even though the system allows you to submit an international application, let's say by for fall, for example, by May 30th, departments have much earlier application deadlines to submit, and you have to submit concurrent applications, one for the department and one for the system. So if you miss the deadline on the department everyone, for example, you will not, and all of the advisors there are the ones who can actually assist you and ensure that whatever program you're applying to meets all the requirements and deadlines. So that would be my recommendation, that you would search for our friends there. Matt?
Yeah, for US schools, generally speaking, can you all hear me? Okay. For US schools, generally speaking, you can apply 1 year before the start of the term that you want to begin. The important thing for international students to realize is that you don't need to have finished school in order to apply. You apply while you're in high school. We just need your most recent grades, your most recent transcript. Please don't wait until you graduate to apply. Apply in your final year of secondary school. But yeah, as everyone said, it's kind of different all around the world. It can be a little head spinning. In the US, we have schools that are on a semester-based year, so you can apply. You can start twice a year. You have some schools that are on a trimester. You can start 3 times a year, and you have some schools that are on a quarter-based academic year, where you can start 4 times a year. So really depends. PSU is actually on a quarter-based year, so there are 4 chances to apply per year. You never have to wait too long. And we do what's called rolling admissions. So I didn't actually know this when I was in high school, but I didn't know what this was, but rolling admissions means that there are no special deadlines. You can sort of apply throughout the year. So that hopefully makes things a little bit easier for you if you're thinking about PSU. Yeah, and back to you, Shuttle.
Yeah, sounds good. And just once again, I just want to reiterate that the importance of being in touch early, because this is what we do on a daily basis, is we advise students in terms of what your options are based on your background, your GPA, your finances, when you want to study, where you want to study, what you need to put together in terms of your application, and all those kinds of things. So that's really, really important to stay in touch with us so that we can help you maximize your opportunities for different universities. So that's definitely our main objective on a day-to-day basis when talking to students. So the next one kind of moves on forward in terms of when and all those kinds of things, and looking at admissions criteria. I'm assuming they're talking about from a Norwegian student's perspective, from a Vietnamese, from undergraduate majority, but just know that this will be different from institution to institution and subject to subject. But as a general kind of term, what are you guys looking for? So Matt, again, from an Australian perspective in Bond University.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. It's going to be different from institution. It's going to be different based on programs. But generally, we're obviously looking as an English component. We all know, we've had the pleasure of being to Norway, how perfect your English is. So it seems a bit unnecessary. However, you are required to meet the English language requirements. So you'll probably find that almost all institutions will have some sort of requirement for English coming out of Norway. So typically in Australia, that's around a Vietnamese 4. There are some that may consider a little bit less, around a 3. But again, it's specific to the institution. And then of course, there could be other arrangements in place that allow you to get around that. So again, another reason why you need to look at the institution or speak with someone within SONOR who can tell you about that particular institution and what that arrangement may be. As far as entry to the program, again, it's really just dependent. You need to be chugging along pretty well, but there's some courses that have quite easy entry. More general programs where there's more students coming in at a level where you still haven't quite figured out your specialization. So it might be easier to get into sort of a more arts related area where you still haven't quite figured out your specialty. And then as you sort of specialize and find that area, it becomes more defined. Whereas if you're applying into a more concrete defined region, sort of like a biomedical science again, or perhaps an architecture or something that you know what that outcome is going to be from the start, it can be a little bit harder to get into. And again, you also have to maintain those prerequisite subjects, particular subjects that you may have needed based on institution to get into that. So it really does require a little bit of work and a little bit of research. So to limit that, again, not to keep coming back to you, Shuttle, but the SONOR team can really cut down your time and help you out with that. Abby.
Thank you, Matt. I will echo that. It's quite similar in the UK. It really will depend on the degree course that you're applying to, what essential subjects they require, and also what university you're applying to. So depending on those things, they will look at a different average score in your Vitnamal. I'll actually put a link just to give you an idea of what our entry requirements are. That's for undergraduate study, obviously, that I'm talking about. For those that are wondering about postgraduate study, that link that I've just shared with everyone also includes that. So absolutely, different courses, might ask for a particular grade in maths, a particular grade in English. For English language requirements, we do actually accept the English within your high school studies, the Vitnamal. So you don't have to take, for example, an additional test like IELTS or TOEFL. So, as long as you get a minimum score within your English, within your high school studies, you don't have to take that additional test and pay for it, which is really great because obviously with the new rules in the UK coming into effect in January, which may mean that you will have to have a visa potentially to study, depending on your individual personal circumstances, and if you do or don't have a dual nationality. So that's kind of an extra bonus there. But a lot of UK universities are exactly the same. We will accept the English, but it really depends. If you're applying to Oxford for PPE or maths or psychology, there's going to be different entry requirements for those subjects, as if you're applying to Warwick or maybe a different university. It will vary, but they will, things to note are, if it's a very scientific subject, they're likely to look at your science related and STEM subjects and ask for a particular grade, or some very very social science based subjects or humanities based subjects may just ask for an overall score in your Vitnamal. So it can really vary. UCAS is a really good resource to look at all the overall universities and entry requirements and courses. But also SONOR can really help you with applying to the UK as well.
Perfect. Matthew, can you take the lead for the US perspective?
Sure. Yeah, for the US, it really depends on the school, but most schools are looking for three things. First, they're looking at your grades in secondary school. Second, many schools do require a standardized test score like an SAT or ACT. And thirdly, a lot of schools require things like letters of recommendation, personal statements, extracurricular activities. So really, those are the things in general that schools in the US look at. PSU is a little different. As I mentioned in my presentation before, we only look at your grades. So we're looking at an average of 4 on your Vitnamal for entry to PSU. Now, if we do have borderline students, sometimes we do ask for things like letters of recommendation or personal statements, but generally we do not. Vanessa, do you want to talk a little bit more about CSU or add anything more about US school admission requirements?
Yeah, I would probably say a couple other things. In terms of CSUN, I would say, yes, we look, as an international student, we look into mainly 3 aspects. One, and assuming you are applying for an undergraduate degree at this point, we would look into a completion of a high school diploma. We would look into your GPA, your grade point average, which are your grades in high school of a 3.0 out of a 4.0. And I'm sure in the Vitno, SONOR can help you with that. I don't know by heart. And we are looking into English proficiency as well, where we accept a number of exams, not just the TOEFL and the IELTS, but we do accept ITAP and we accept others. We do not require an SAT, and we do not require a letter of recommendation for undergrad. For grad, it's a different story because then, you know, some majors would require GRE and a GMAT as well. Some majors would require a higher GPA or a higher English proficiency, depending on the major you're applying to. And a number of them would require additional documentation as letter of references and portfolio or work experience resumes and so on and so forth. But again, SONOR has all this information and it can assist you with. If you're applying for a study abroad program, the semester at CSUN, and then the difference would be that we require a lower GPA. So instead of a 3.0 out of a 4.0, you're looking at a 2.0 out of a 4.0 for the semester abroad. So it really depends on the program you are interested in. But I'm actually, I'll get Abby's idea, and I'm typing up here a link on Prospective Students International that breaks that down to, you know, if you are a transfer student, if you're a first-time freshman, if you are a graduate, if you are, you know, so there's a different types of students, and depending on the type of student, there'll be different requirements. So I, again, would either email us or reach out to SONOR for help with that. That would be my advice.
I can provide a little bit of a kind of broader background in terms of what our institutions in general would ask for. So I would say that normally when dealing with institutions throughout the world, it's sort of like a benchmark of a 4.0 GPA from Vitnemore, from your diploma, your high school diploma here in Norway. So 4.0, that's sort of like the benchmark for a lot of institutions worldwide, to be honest with you. So, but there are variations going upwards, and there are variations going downwards. So it's really dependent on what you want to study and where you want to study. So within the mix of institutions that we have, we like to say that we have an option for any student, regardless of your academic background. Whether or not you have a 5.9 GPA. So we have institutions that are looking for that type of student, that are really highly selective in terms of what kind of students they're looking for. If you've been struggling in high school and have a 2.5 GPA, but you know, since you have matured, you know what you want to do, and it's a totally different way of looking at it at this point in time. We have options for that as well. So there are heaps of things that we can adjust in terms of that in different institutions that we work with. And that's part of our selective process when selecting those 60 institutions that we work with as well. So that we have different types of institutions that can cater for different types of students. There's some follow-up questions from students here in terms of admissions criteria. One is for you, Vanessa, and the question is, what would you consider to be the perfect GPA a student can have to get into the university? So, you know, straight A's, I guess, but, you know.
I would say the perfect GPA is all of the GPA that you get that get you admitted. That would be the answer. But I think that if you meet the minimum GPA requirements, you are admissible to the university. You don't necessarily need, at CSUN at least, you don't necessarily need to have a perfect 4.0 GPA, but you need to meet the minimum admission requirements. So it's more of the whole package, not just the GPA, but if you do have the whole package and you meet the minimum requirements, you are admissible. And then it's a matter of moving forward with your application and enrollment. That would be my simple answer to the question.
Yeah, sounds good. There's also a follow-up question from Lisa here in regards to admissions to Australian universities, and whether or not you guys take into account the extra points that Norwegian students get for higher education in Norway. So we've never really talked about that, Matt, so I'm not sure if you want to take it or if I should take it.
Can you just clarify when you mean the higher education? So they're looking for credit, or are you just looking for?
No, so for admission purposes to Norwegian universities, the Norwegian universities will look at a student's GPA and they will add on extra points.
Okay.
And the total score will then go into the evaluation of who gets in or not. Reality is that's yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so ours would sort of be, I picked up when Matthew was saying how there's a range of different things that can be considered from institutions that they're looking at, including extracurricular and things that you're involved in. We're very much the same at Bonn, and there's a lot of the institutions are the same in Australia. We'll initially be looking, and again, there could be the odd program that breaks this rule, but they're generally looking at the GPA or the academics that you're coming through first with no extra points put on that. That would just be your overall results like coming in. But that's when we can get a little bit creative and look outside of that and say, okay, look, you know what? They were involved in this, or they had this extracurricular activity. They did a lot of volunteer. They had this incredible job experience that if the student is borderline or maybe just barely making that entry requirement, that could be the make or break difference. So when you do submit your application, you are submitting more than just your results. You're also putting in a personal statement, and in some cases, depending on program, also recommendation letters, references, and so forth like that. If it's something that requires work experience at a postgraduate level, you'll need a time frame of that work experience and people to contact. So there are things, like I said, architecture portfolio as well. So we certainly do look outside of that academics, but if the academic meets the entry on its own, we'll leave it at that. But if it doesn't, then we'll get a little bit creative and look at more to what's in your application. And just for an extra 30 seconds, we haven't talked about scholarships, but these are the extra things that make the difference with scholarships too. We have some academic scholarships, but again, if everyone meets that academic scholarship and we only have so many scholarships, that's when we start getting creative and looking at those extra things that a student's involved in. And that's sort of the approach that a lot of the Australian universities take. That will be just specific to academic, but it's also looking at that extra stuff as well.
Yeah, I can, tell you a little bit more about that, Lisa, in terms of your question. So in terms of the extra points that you used to for higher education in Norway, that really only exists within the boundaries of Norwegian higher education. So an institution looking at your diploma from a GPA perspective will look at the total number of subjects you've taken. They will add up all those courses and the grades that you have, divide by the number of grades that you have, and there's your GPA. That's the reality of what they're looking at. But as Matt has been speaking about, as Abby told you, as well as Matthew and Vanessa has been talking about, that there are different elements that they're able to look at in addition to your GPA as well, whether that be statements, references, and everything like that. So, but you are not, when you calculate your GPA, look at your GPA based on your grades alone, not your extra points for age, armed forces. There's a question here about the armed forces as well, whether or not you can get your extra points based on that, which you're not able to. Folk high schools and stuff like that, the extra points for that, it will not count towards international admission. So that hope that answers that question. The same person also had a question about admission to Auckland University. I would say I'm not going to go into detail about that now, but get in touch with one of our counselors and we can tell you straight off the bat everything that needs to go into an application for any of our university partners, including the University of Auckland. So there's another follow-up question, so I think we probably just deal with that straight away in terms of admission. And we have a regulation here that's called the 23-5 rule, which means if you're above 23 and you've been working for the 5 consecutive years, but you haven't completed high school, you only completed the core curriculum courses in high school, you're eligible for higher admission into Norway. So the question is reality. Will you be able to, in the different countries, admit what we would call an adult student if they haven't completed their vitnemål? Matt, can you go first?
Sure. So in Australia, they often refer to that as mature age entry. And mature age doesn't necessarily need to be what we think sometimes is mature being older. Sometimes, like I said, it could be still in your early 20s within that. But there is the option to do that. Again, it's going to be institution by institution. Some will look based on program at what your work experience. So what have you done then? If you haven't completed high school equivalent, what is it that you've done? There'll be other universities that just say, sorry, no, we're only going based on you need to have completed that high school. You need to have that vitnemål. That's what their entry is. So it really is going to be different. For us at Bond, again, initially we're looking for that you've completed that high school. However, again, I feel like I'm putting a lot here on SONOR. This is where you talk to SONOR and say, hey, look, what institutions will consider this? They use their contacts to say, okay, hey, this is the situation of that student. Maybe you chose to go work. Maybe there was an illness, whatever that factor is. Can we look at different options? And again, for example, back at Bond, we also have diploma programs. We also have foundation programs. So it's all about finding your entry point. So if you can't make it into the university, into your bachelor's degree, you may be able to come into a diploma program and do 2 semesters or perhaps 1 year. And that some of that study that you do is at a below university level, but it will credit into your university and will count that as you move along. So again, you can still achieve the outcome you want, but it may be a different entry point. And I don't want to confuse you if I haven't already, but again, this is where someone like SONOR can help you, and each institution will have different entry points. But ask the questions about how am I going to get to that outcome, and be prepared for different pathways from different institutions to get there. But if that's really what you want in the end, there will be a way to get there.
Thank you, Matt. In terms of a UK perspective, you will find that they will want you to have some form of qualification to apply with. If you haven't got the VIPNAML, you will find a lot of UK universities won't permit you entry onto the first year of an undergraduate course. However, there may potentially be entry onto a foundation year. We call it international foundation years in the UK, which is a year before you would start your degree level study in the UK, and then you would obviously, that's you got to think about extra year of funding, extra year of accommodation. Certainly, we need something to be, for entry onto an undergraduate degree, we need something to be the equivalent of the VIPNAML. So whether it be A levels or IB, we need the equivalent of that for entry. For some courses, in the UK, I can't speak for all institutions in the UK, but there will be some degree of flexibility, but they will still be wanting something that's equivalent to what we call a level 3 qualification, which is basically A levels, which is that kind of, again, standard of academia across a certain level of subjects. So basically it's to ensure that you can succeed on your undergraduate study. If we admitted people that we weren't certain and confident that they could study for the whole 3 years in the UK, some of our courses are quite full on in terms of the academic content. It's basically to ensure that you can succeed and graduate on your degree course. But having said that, it's really worth inquiring with SONOR and each individual university, because if you have got a wealth of experience in a certain industry from your 5 years of working, different universities will value that in different ways. At Warwick, we certainly would either want you to do the VIPNAML or a foundation year, and we're wanting that academic level to be met before you start your studies on an undergraduate degree. So I'll pass over to either Vanessa or Matthew to contribute to that.
You can probably take the lead on this one, Vanessa.
Yeah, basically at CSUN you must have completed your equivalent to a high school diploma to be admitted as undergraduate. We do not have anything called foundation year or so ever, but in the US there is something called GED diploma that you could test it and take courses on that. It's not offered at CSUN, but some community colleges do offer it, and some universities in the US would accept the GED, which is a diploma in the US. I don't know if you want to add anything, Matt, but I'm not very familiar with any other way of getting into US university as an undergraduate student without having completed your high school diploma. I don't know, Kicho, if you have anything to say.
Yeah, so PSU would not be able to admit that particular student, but as Vanessa said, there are a couple of options here in the US. One is something called a community college. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's sort of a North American thing, I guess, but community colleges are very affordable regional schools. Most cities or regions have at least one, and a lot of them have high school completion programs. So it's for exactly that kind of student who didn't finish their their high school studies. But the way it works is that you would complete your high school studies and also be taking university level courses at the same time. So I think they vary school by school, but they do exist at a lot of community colleges. Here in Portland, we have a wonderful community college called Portland Community College, PCC. And that might be just one example of that kind of school. And I also, speaking of the GED diploma, which Vanessa talked about, the GED diploma is the equivalent to a high school diploma, and I don't think you necessarily have to be connected to a school in order to study for that and take that. So, and I'm pretty sure international students can take the GED and therefore earn the equivalent to a US high school diploma and then enter university. So I hope that answers your question. Just be persistent. If you want an education, there is a pathway to get there. So don't give up.
I can add on that we have a handful of partners in the US as well that do accept the 23/5 ruling that we have in Norway. Since Norwegian universities will accept that as part of their admission process, there's about 4 institutions that we work with currently in the US that have accepted that same kind of pathway as Norwegian universities would accept. So if you're under that kind of 23/5 ruling and the US is your destinations, there are still options as well directly with a handful of institutions. It's limited, but it's still some options available. There's a few follow-up questions in terms of this, so we'll just get right on those as well. Ida has a question here in terms of if she has to go into the armed forces, whether or not she can keep her spot at the university for a year. If she has applied, been admitted, but then has to enroll in the armed forces, will she be able to keep her spot for a full year and then start her education the year after? Matt?
The short answer is yes for most programs. Typically, we have a rule at Bond where you can defer your program up until the year. So whatever your initial start date was, if you have another obligation or whatever reason in your life that you need to take that time before you start, you just let us know, or let SONOR know. If they've helped you through the process, let us know. We can defer that offer and we'll send that out to you for whatever semester that you wanted to start up until a year. If something happens then that you wanted to start earlier, we can then change that back. So we are quite flexible in that way. Certain programs that are what we call our capped programs, where there's limited entry, especially around your sort of physiotherapy, medicine, even though our medicine program is only open to Australian citizens or permanent residents, but there are particular programs that are capped where we are unable to defer. So we will unfortunately say you'll need to reapply, but we will certainly try our best. I guess the assumption is that if you made entry the first time, then there's probably a very positive chance that you'd make entry again if you did have to reapply, and we'll make that as easy as a process as possible. But typically 1 year is fine. Anything after that you would need to reapply, other than the odd program.
Anything you guys want to add in terms of that? I'm assuming it's pretty much the same in most countries, but if there's anything you want to add, feel free. No, I can go because here in Norway that's an automatic thing. So if you enlisted in the armed forces, you're automatically able to defer for a full year. So the deferral here is more based on the application. Again, if we work with you as a student, we will handle that kind of piece of paperwork on your behalf. Talk to the university and get a deferral based on that. But there might be some exceptions, so definitely it makes sense to stay in touch to see what the status is in terms of your specific program. But as Matt said, and I've been dealing with students now for over 15 years, if they've been gaining admission 1 year, you know, the likelihood that you're going to get admission next year is pretty good. There might be some courses, obviously creative courses. There's a cohort of musicians coming in, and the cohort might be different 1 year from the next year, and so on and so forth. So there might be a few of those elements, but in general terms, that's normally relatively easy to get around. Normally what we have an issue with is medical schools. That's a little bit more problematic, but in general, that seems to be going quite well. We have some questions in terms of specifics, in terms of psychology as well, which might be different from country to country. So there's a student who sent in a question wanting to study psychology and has a question on specialization within emotion-focused therapy, which is quite specific, definitely. And if you have any kind of insight in terms of that, I can do a little bit of a short answer in terms of accreditation coming back after you guys are done. But reality, I think the question here is, how can I qualify to become a psychologist within the different institutional structures? And is there a specialization within emotion-focused therapy that I can look into? Again, start with you, Matt, and then move along.
Okay. I can answer part of that, and the other part that I can find out specific information about the emotional part of that. I do not know the specifics of the subject content within that, so I'm not even going to try to go there. Maybe one of my other colleagues will know a little bit more in that area, but I can certainly find that information. In Australia, if you want to move through the pathway to be a practicing psychologist, you first need to start and complete what's called a Bachelor of Psychological Science in Australia. There are some programs as well that are still maintain the term Bachelor of Psychology, and sometimes you can actually do it in what's called a Bachelor of Arts with a major in psychology. So again, these are the specifics you need to find out through the help of SONOR or the individual institution. So the first process is that you complete that bachelor's program, and then if you want to move forward within Australia, you would then apply to one of two options. There's what they call the Graduate Diploma in Psychological Science, or there's the honors year of psychology. And those are your two pathways. The honors is the one that leads towards more academia. It's more research focused. So you would focus on that if you were heading towards the more academia and sort of that side of things from the research element of it. If not, there's the graduate diploma, which has a slightly lower entry, but still pretty much the same curriculum outside of the research. You'd finish that one along that avenue, and at the end of that, you'd move to clinical psychology or your master's of clinical psychology, or some institutions will offer a master's of forensic psychology as well. From there, you can work to become a practicing psychologist within Australia. That's the pathway. The trick, though, is how are you going to be able to stay in Australia and do that? And this is where you have two big things you need to research early, and that's what happens if I do all of that. I qualify for all of that in Australia, and I want to come back home and visit my parents and live in Norway again. Am I going to be able to be a practicing psychologist? And that's where the politics between countries and the different accreditation boards, and again, not to complicate things, get a little bit more technical and cause some challenges. So these are the early questions you need to ask SONOR and look at your accreditation boards. Anything like a psychology, a medicine, physio, nutrition, and the list goes on, where there's specific accreditation boards you need to meet when you come back to your home country. You need to find out, is the program I do going to be equivalent? If not, what else do I need to do when I return to be able to practice in my country? If you did want to stay in Australia because you did all of that study, you then need to find a way, how am I going to be able to stay in Australia and work? Because at the end of your student visa, you'll be asked to kindly leave and return to your home country unless you found a different loophole to be able to stay and work. And there are a few. You could find someone that you deeply admire and want to spend the rest of your life there. But these are the tricky questions you need to ask, and ask early on. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to echo that as well, because there is a particular qualification if you want to be a clinical psychologist, which is a much higher level, the highest level of postgraduate study. If you're looking, I'm assuming you're looking to study a bachelor's in psychology. Our courses in psychology are all accredited by the British Society of Psychology, which means that there's certain modules that are core and part of the program to make sure you have a really good foundation in psychology and the key principles, and then you can keep on adding on with optional modules throughout your degree, and in your third year almost specialize in a certain area. So you can check out our optional modules in our undergraduate psychology department. As Matt mentioned, you know, if you wanted to progress to be a clinical psychologist, you know, you'd be looking to do maybe an MSc or an MPhil in a psychological related subject, and then go on to a doctorate in psychology. And the same problem is, you know, if you are wanting to go back to Norway or maybe work in Australia, in the US, you may have to take particular professional exams and almost prove your level of competency if you want to work in a different country to where you studied your qualification. So obviously if you're studying in the UK and want to work in the UK, then obviously your qualification will be fine. Again, as Matt mentioned, you know, you've got to think about the visa restrictions. Obviously, if you have a student visa, I don't know if you're aware, but the UK government had announced not long ago that there is a graduate route if you have studied in the UK, where you can work for 2 years post-graduation. So you may want to study in the UK and work maybe in the NHS or with children. We do offer a course as well in undergraduate studies in psychology with education if you wanted to combine maybe a few specialisms together. So again, same kind of way to, you know, approach that, you know, study and specialism. You know, what do you want to do after your studies in psychology? And it sounds like you're, you already know what you want to do post graduation. So you've got to think about the visa implications and also practicing that job that you want to do after university. What extra things do you need to do to get there? Thank you. I don't know if Vanessa or Matthew want to add.
I can jump in and just add one more component here. As psychologists, it's a very popular degree at CSUN. It's similar to what Abby and Matt have said. You know, you do have the Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology with a major in psychology, which is kind of the beginning and the foundation to gets the ground foundation courses and everything into your specialization. But if you do want to do clinical psychology, if you do want to become a therapist at more of a certification level, you do have to go through a master's degree and a specialization in order to be able to get that license and in order to be an eligible psychologist and therapist in the area. And then the tricky part, it becomes with that certification being valid in the US, are you able to then exercise the profession based on your work restrictions in terms of your visa requirements? So it's a tricky decision that you got to make and for your future plan and goals. I sent Andy, I sent you a link to our psychology program and the department and details on areas of research and possible specializations in case you want to look and take a deep dive into that. And I'm happy to forward your email to the department if you have specific questions. I'm not sure if I can add any more than that right now.
Anything you want to add, Matthew?
No, just that the undergraduate bachelor's degree is just, again, it's the only the beginning. And if you want to practice psychology in the United States, you'll need to get some sort of licensing through a graduate program, which is an additional 2 years beyond your undergraduate program. But I'm also going to chat you the psychology pathways that are on our website at PSU, Andy. So I hope that's helpful for you.
I can just briefly say that any kind of health professions, Matt touched base on this. So any kind of health subjects you want to study does require some sort of extra accreditation coming back. So the general rule of thumb is that you need to have qualified for a professional career in the country you're currently studying. So whether that be Australia, the US, or the UK, you have to have completed your studies there and be recognized as a therapist in that country prior to coming back home. That's the general rule of thumb. That being said, there's a few things going on. So obviously Norway's just recently signed the agreement with the UN, stating that they're going to start looking at a more unified way of reviewing higher education. That's a fair few years away, I would assume, but it's be interesting to see how they look upon those kinds of accreditation bodies as well. So get in touch with us, because we need to provide you with the right kind of information so that you know what you're getting into prior to making those kinds of commitments, studying abroad for a subject that you might not be able to get accreditation coming back home. Your degree is definitely valuable in that sense, but if your main goal is to work as a therapist in Norway, we need to make sure that you have a pathway that makes that feasible. So get in touch so we can talk more directly to you about that and what kind of options work for you. We can get some of the questions really on top here as well. I'll rush through a few of them because some of them are really specific for me at the end, but we have a question that came in relatively early. And just briefly for you, Abby, does skipping classes affect your grade in the UK? Or is it when you attend class up to you?
That's a really good question, and one which I have some extra knowledge on because I used to work on attendance in the business school for the undergraduate office at Warwick, and sometimes it does. You'd be surprised. I mean, certainly there will be a consideration of how much you've participated as part of a module, and a module, what I mean by that is, is what your degree is made up of. So modules, you might have 10 per year on an undergraduate degree at Warwick. Some universities, may be very flexible, may not scrutinise your attendance. However, especially in seminar settings where discussion and group work is, essential to pass it. Group work especially, if you're not attending, seminars, lectures, and participating in group work, that can significantly affect the grade for your module and ultimately your degree classification. So as someone that used to do attendance as part of the business school, I wouldn't condone, not attending classes. However, during the coronavirus, obviously people can't physically be on campus or physically attend lectures. However, we have just transferred everything virtually where people can't come to campus. We have a very blended learning approach during the coronavirus pandemic because we actually really value that peer-to-peer group work and different opinions, different perspectives. It really enriches your experience and it will significantly improve your work and your outcomes in your degree if you are an active member on our degree courses. So I would definitely recommend not skipping class. So that's my answer. I don't know if anyone else wants to contribute.
I think we'll leave it at that. Don't skip class. I think that's a wise message, I guess. Marita has a couple of questions as well. She's looking for a particularly good tourism program. So if anybody wants to jump in and grab the word in terms of that. She also wants to know what the advantage of studying that particular program at your university. So anybody want to take the lead on that? Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in for sure. If you were around at the beginning of the presentation, I showed you what I think are some pretty nice pictures on the Gold Coast in Australia. Although we have some international border challenges at the moment, life in Australia is pretty normal. We've had a couple outbreaks in some of the major cities that they've gotten well and truly under control. The Gold Coast, as I mentioned, is the top tourism hub in Australia. So it is full of hotels, it is full of the airport, constant cruises coming in there as well. So there's endless opportunities to be involved in the sort of tourism sort of perspective. The program itself at Bond, our Bachelor of Tourism Management, there's lots of components for you to get involved in that sort of atmosphere around the Gold Coast, a lot of internships. You have a 400-hour placement. It's a very high level management program. So it's designed, you're not sort of in the catering serving food. It's more of managing the accommodation, managing the food and beverage, managing the entire hotel, or managing the cruise ship, working across different areas. So it's a very combination of an executive level program and taught in a very personalized environment, and you're on the Gold Coast, which is just amplifies your opportunity for a sort of experience and an opportunity to be involved in that. So I would highly recommend the Gold Coast as a location to study that and bond.
I can jump in and say something about CSUN here. It's actually another one of our very popular degrees. As a matter of fact, and similar to what Matt said about Bond, we are in Los Angeles, which is an incredible city for the tourism and the entertainment industry. The campus itself, it's really well located for that. Our tourism, recreation, and management degree program offered both at the undergrad and graduate levels, really connected to the industry, and I think that's a key component here. CSUN as an institution, it focuses a lot on the industry and the hands-on experience in terms of professional connection of your degree to what the outcome of it will be. But in addition to all of this, we are in the process of building a hotel on campus, and that hotel will be used for our students to have hands-on practice experience for students in the recreation tourism management program, as we do have the counseling center that uses students from the psychology department, the health center that uses the students from pre-med. So we do have a lot of resources on campus that would allow for that internship experience and that hands-on experience as well. As soon as the hotel is built, which should be in a year. COVID delayed it. It was supposed to be built by summer next year, but there was a little bit of delay there with the pandemic, but it's in the process of being built.
Anyone else? Anything to add? Yep. That's good. I can tell you, Marita, again, you know, we've been telling this for I don't know how many times, but I can't stress enough the importance of reaching out so we can sit down and talk about your options and figure out what works best for you in terms of where you are now and where you want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead in time. So reach out, and if you're not already in contact with one of our counselors, reach out to me and I can put you in contact with one of our counselors for such a discussion. There's a couple of questions here from Henriette and Benjamin. It goes directly to you, Matt, in terms of Australia and the current COVID-19 situation. And the first question is, what are your chances of being able to study in Australia mid-year 2021, considering the pandemic? And Benjamin follows up with in-depth question in terms of that, with inbound flights being cancelled. Do the Australian embassy authorities have a opening date set for bringing students into Australia?
Two great questions with two. It's like we don't know specifically, but we'd like to think with some of the recent news coming with vaccinations and vaccines that we're all heading hopefully in the right direction. As I mentioned, Australia has done quite well. There was a large outbreak in Victoria, in Melbourne, which they worked really hard to get under control. So they've been virus free. I didn't check today, but no new cases in the last, I think, 20 days now. So Australia has handled it well. So school-wise, university-wise, things are back to somewhat, I hate to say the word normal, but there are classes happening, students are on campus. As far as the borders go, there's been no official date to when potentially international students will be able to come back. Are we all hopeful? Yes. Do we think it's in 2021? We certainly hope so, and we certainly believe so. What I would say is the politics beside it, and again, I don't work in government and I have to be careful what I say, but there are still a number of Australian citizens that have been unable to come back to Australia. So there are flights coming into Australia. There's a mandatory quarantine when you come into Australia. There still are Australian citizens that have been unable to get back. So the priority for the government at the moment is to get those individuals back to Australia because they wish to come back as citizens. Each state and territory in Australia has submitted pilot programs. And what I mean by pilot programs are programs in place for international students to come. The federal government has already announced that it is a high priority to get international students back into the country. So each state and territory has been asked, university by university, to submit plans of how that looks. What are we doing to help get those students back? What's a quarantine potentially going to look like? What's the campus going to look like? How are we going to facilitate and make that happen? They have all been submitted to the governments. They're all under review, and we're all sort of like everywhere in the world, just waiting to see where this is all heading next. So we like to believe we're heading in the right direction. The focus is each institution's probably, depending who you talk to, there certainly is going to be a focus on continuing students. These are students that were in Australia, that were in the middle of studying, returned home when the pandemic hit, and now they've been studying remotely, and they need to get back and want to get back to finish the program. So there is a consensus that that'll be the focus for those students. And then obviously after that, it'll be new students coming in. But again, we're very hopeful it'll happen soon. We're just all in a wait and see pattern with that. So again, another reason to keep in contact with the individual institutions, as well as most importantly, SONOR. I think most universities in Australia have highlighted on their main webpage COVID updates of what's happening, that are all fed through from government updates as well. So the information's there. I know it's very frustrating, but I think, it is coming, and we just all need to stay positive with that. There's a lot of remote study opportunities out there if you do want to get started, if you've lost that patience and you really want to get started. But I think it is coming, and we're hopeful it'll be soon.
Sounds good. It's one of those things. We don't know what's going to happen, do we, in most countries? There's a question here for you, Abby, in relation to the UK. Do I require a visa to study in the UK?
Great question. So it really depends on your personal circumstances. We are actually awaiting for further information from the UK government. However, the rights of EEA citizens are being protected in some capacity, but we're really wanting some further details from the government on that. At the moment, it looks like you won't need a visa, but in terms of how much student support you get, for example, either through the EU settlement scheme or Student Loans UK, for those that qualify, it really can vary, and we're really looking for those that fine print from the UK government. So stay tuned is my advice.
Sounds good. There's a question that I can just answer quite generically as well. It's the question of whether or not you need to have studied geography in order to major in geography, and most of the times the answer to that is no. So we only have one compulsory geography class in high school, regardless here in Norway. So there might be certain institutions that have other requirements besides geography, whether that be biology or anything like history or anything, you name it. So it could be different things, but again, get in touch with us so we can look at the different institutions you are reviewing. In general terms, I would say no, there's no requirements to have done any in-depth study in geography in order to major in geography prior to that from your education in Norway, essentially. There's a couple other questions here that I'll just go quickly run through as well, because they relate to funding issues. So there's a question that came in terms of how what Lånekassen essentially covers, and I'm not going to go into details with the specific numbers. Just going to keep it simple and say that Lånekassen provides funding three ways. So they provide funding for tuition support and to cover what the actual cost of attendance is. So that might vary from institution to institution depending on how much that institution costs and whether or not there's some elements of extra funding available. Like Abby represents University of Warwick, and Warwick is one of those institutions that's on a list here in Norway that provides extra scholarships as well if you get admitted. And there's, about 50, 60 of those institutions worldwide where you can get extra scholarships to go to. So there are a few incentives in terms of that. And Lånekassen provides funding for what we call basic necessities, so your living costs and your book supplies, all the things that you need whilst on campus. In addition to that, the third and final thing is travel support. At the moment, 2 times round trip ticket to the destination where you are going. So in total, you should be able to cover all your costs through funding from Lånekassen, but it really depends on how much of that you want to have as a student loan. So again, that's one of the things that we try and work with the US students to figure out, how much can you get, but how much do you want to subsidize in terms of loans? Do you want to look into savings, the other opportunities, scholarships and elements like that, and can cover some of these costs as well. But any student that's a Norwegian citizen, that has progressed and completed high school, and has a connection to Norway out of at least 3 out of the final 5 years, are able to get funding. So there's really rarely any limitation to that. And every single institution that we work with are available for funding from Lånekassen. The final question, which is a good question for everyone to kind of jump in at, is what kind of opportunities do I have to work alongside my studies in the different countries? So what's my opportunities through my visa in Australia, in the UK, and then in the US as well? So that's the final question for tonight. If nobody else has any questions, so please write it into the chat if you have other questions as well, and we'll definitely be around to answer those. But that's the final question on my list so far. So Matt, you can go ahead for Australia.
Absolutely. Great question. It's quite an investment to consider going international study. And as Kjetil said, there you are, as a Norwegian citizen, if you are, you've got access to some funding, which is certainly helpful. However, there's always extra cost. When you come to Australia to study, you are eligible to work what we say is 40 hours over a 2-week period. So basically 20 hours per week that you can work alongside your study. And then if you are studying a longer period of time, like a full degree study, you can actually study full time, or you can work full time in between your semesters on holidays, etc. So you do have an opportunity there to subsidize some of your costs by working, as well as gaining valuable experience in another country working. The good thing is that the minimum wage is very high in Australia, so you can actually do really well. The cost of living in Norway, we've had a chance to been there, and is very high. Australia is not cheap either. There's some things that you'll find certainly cheaper. Some things like clothing and food at a restaurant is quite expensive. So you have an opportunity to work and sort of make some money to that. Being on the Gold Coast where we are, there's a lot of jobs within tourism areas, retail opportunities. And of course, if you're there longer term, you can really dive in and work with firms or more experience related to your particular study, depending what that is. So lots of opportunity. Other cities in Australia, again, the visa is the same. The only other thing is once you're done studying, depending on what you've studied, if you've met the requirement, there's also a graduate work visa that the Australian government, you're eligible to apply for if you meet the criteria to stay on and work up to 3 years. On the Gold Coast, 2 years, other places in Australia, to stay on and have that experience to work as well.
Thank you, Matt. In terms of during your studies work at Warwick, you can certainly work on a part-time basis, whether you do or don't need a visa. Depending on your course, you might find it quite overwhelming having to fit in, new academic study that's full-time, as well as part-time study. But we do actually have a thing called Uni Temps, which is based at Warwick University and is kind of branched out across the UK at other institutions, where you can work on a temporary basis, a one-off, or maybe during the summer holidays, or for specific events where, for example, our open days, you can work as a student ambassador. We have international students, EU students, UK students doing that job. So, depending on your restrictions on your visa, I would imagine, you wouldn't have time at all for going over the maximum amount of work hours you can do on a visa, because you're going to be doing full-time study, and it's going to be very full on. So there's lots of opportunities on campus as well as the local area, whether that be, working at one of our food outlets or entertainment bases like our Warwick Arts Centre or our bars and clubs on campus. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities for part-time paid work. There is volunteering opportunities as well as your internships, which we've mentioned earlier, which you can do either as part of your degree or you can do in the summer holidays. There is if you're wanting to do a work placement or an internship within the holidays, there is a bursary which you can apply for to help fund maybe your travel to and from your student accommodation to your internship in summer holidays or Easter holidays. So there is that level of support as well to work alongside your studies and build your CV as well. So that is the case at Warwick, and that is very common across a lot of UK universities. They're either based near a city or within a city, and there's a lot of opportunities to work part-time alongside your studies. Thanks, guys. I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Well, there's a follow-up question for you, Abby, from one of the students in the chat. This is, would you say it's hard to find part-time jobs in Coventry?
Absolutely not. No, I was going to say, I'm probably painting a picture like our campus is the city, but we're very much, on the edge of a very vibrant, large student city, Coventry, where we have, sporting events, we have shopping arcades, we have bars, restaurants, gigs going on. We're actually the City of Culture 2021, so we imagine there's going to be even more opportunity to be part-time employed and be part of the events that are going on in the city next year. But yes, certainly, if you want to live in Coventry after your first year at Warwick, or if you want to live in Leamington, where there's also lots of part-time employment opportunities in there as well. Even though it's not a city, it's a town, there's opportunities in both areas in the surrounding area of campus.
That's good. Matthew, can you take the lead on work from the US perspective?
Sure, yeah. So if you come to the US as a student, you will most likely come with what's called an F1 visa, student visa. And that means that you can work on campus for up to 20 hours per week. So, there are lots of opportunities to work, at least at PSU. We have international students in our office working. They work in the library and computer labs, tutors, just really we have a tool called Handshake that the school uses to post jobs and then students use to find them. So I think it's not too difficult to find a job on campus. I mentioned about CPT. If your program has a built-in internship as part of the major, then you will be able to work outside of the school for that internship. And then the final thing I'll mention is called OPT. I'm throwing out all of these funny acronyms, but OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. And this is a chance for students to get experience in their field after they graduate. So for example, you can apply for OPT and you can work up to 1 year anywhere in the US within your field, whether that's in Portland or New York or Hawaii or Texas or wherever you find a job. For STEM students, if you're planning on studying STEM, there's an opportunity to get 3-year OPT period after you graduate. So that means you can graduate and then work in your field in the US for 3 years.
I might just want to tell them what STEM is, Matthew, because I don't think a lot of students don't know what that is here.
Sure, yeah. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So the US really wants to welcome that type of student, and it's sort of like a nice reward for finishing a degree here. And quite often that can serve as an audition if you want to get a working permit later. Vanessa, anything you'd like to add to that?
You answered it beautifully. The only other thing I would say is if finding a job on campus during your studies with a CPT and your student visa is important, I would definitely probably then look into larger campus than in smaller campuses. I think probably that makes sense, Matt, because smaller campuses will be a lot more limited in what employment opportunities might be offered to you. When you are looking into a larger campus, you can find a much easier possibility of finding a job at a cafeteria or housing residence halls, or in a performing arts center, in the library. And I mean, there's a lot more needs. So probably there's a better chance of securing that 20-hour-a-week employment.
That's true. And as Abby said, a lot of campuses also in the US are sort of cities within a city. So really every sort of job that exists in a city also exists on the campus. So again, larger campuses generally mean more working opportunities for students.
Sounds good. Thanks for clarifying all those things for the different countries. There's a few extra questions that's popped in here as well. And Marita mentioned that I missed one of her questions as well. She had a question of whether or not different universities have guaranteed housing as an option for first-time incoming students. So again, throw it out there. Matt?
Yeah, great question about housing. Typically in Australia, you will not have guaranteed housing. However, it's by institution. So if I use Bond for an example, we have both on-campus accommodation. We don't own off-campus, but we assist with it. It's just next to the university. So I can't guarantee that you would get accommodation at Bond University. What I would tell you is that if you followed the process in place and laid it out and let us know that you needed accommodation, there's a very good chance you'll have no problem getting on-campus accommodation. But again, you have to follow the process through, which raises another good thing and another good reason to check with each institution or SONOR, separate sometimes the application to study versus your accommodation, because we have a specific time deadline that's different that goes along with accommodation and staying on campus in the lead up to the semester that you might study with. Off-campus housing, for Bond specifically, again, we don't own it, but it's just next to the university. So again, depending on your situation, your age, what you're studying, what you're looking for as part of your experience, we may in fact recommend off-campus, because we do have the beauty of it being just next to the university. So you do not miss out on any of that sort of experience on campus by living far away from the university. But yet you're surrounded by people more your age, you can do a little bit more cooking, you have a little bit more flexibility. So typically in Australia, it's not guaranteed, but most universities will have campus facilities for you to stay on, accommodation facilities, as well as assistance with off-campus, just like us.
Abby?
Thanks, Matt. Yes, it's a really good question, and one which will differ, again, with each university, whether it be in the UK or outside the UK. At Warwick, we like to prioritise our first-year undergraduates for on-campus accommodation. So we have never, in the past few years, had anyone that hasn't been able to get accommodation if they're a first year and wanting to live on campus. So there is that option. We physically can't accommodate all 27,000 students throughout all of their years of study on a degree course. So naturally, after your first year, once you've got a friend network, you've decided who you want to live with, a lot of people in their second, third or fourth year live in Leamington or Coventry in the local area. Again, Coventry being our closest residential area, which is very popular with students. Leamington's just a 20-minute bus ride from campus. In terms of off-campus accommodation, we have a small kind of pool of university managed houses and flats. So you can, you don't have to pay a deposit. You know that you're getting a certain standard, and essentially the university is your landlord. So, the same standard of living you can find on campus and in these university managed houses. But if you don't want to live on campus in your first year, or if you don't want to have a university managed house, there's lots of private rented accommodation that's marketed for students, so it's affordable. You might have only term time lets as well, so you don't have to pay throughout your summer holidays. So it really can vary. For other UK universities, for example, in the very ancient or collegiate universities such as Oxford or Cambridge, a lot of them, live in their halls. It's catered accommodation. It can vary. That's another thing, the variation of accommodation, whether it's self-catered or catered, or whether you've got an ensuite or a shared bathroom, it really can vary. So check out each university's accommodation website. There might be certain deadlines to apply separately for accommodation, or if you put them as a firm choice in UCAS, that sometimes is an automatic application for accommodation as well. So do check it out. But yes, if you're looking for postgraduate study, we do offer that on campus, but it's very small, availability and range. So I definitely recommend living in the local area if you're looking for postgraduate study at Warwick. But we do offer, a wide range of prices and types of accommodation. So it's very varied here. So definitely check it out and do your research again.
Vanessa?
It's not, again, similar. Each institution is different. Each university will have different types of accommodations. Some of them will have on-campus housing. Some of them will not. Some of them will have a network of host families nearby that host students that they work with. Others will have off-site campus accommodations that the housing office can refer students to. So the research and looking into the specific institution you are applying to and what type of accommodations are offered and deadlines for application is always very crucial. At CSUN, we do have a very large number of on-campus housing, but it's also very competitive. We do have and give some sort of buffer and preference to our partners. So that's one of the benefits as well right now, just putting it out there to working with SONOR, because we do set aside some bed allocation to our partners and students referred by them. So that might help you if that's a very key requirement for you if you apply to an institution. Overall, it's first come, first served basis, and we can't guarantee. But also Northridge, it's a university-led community, so there's lots and lots of apartments and houses and properties nearby that students do rent or rent a shared room or just go in a roommate sort of situation. We do have a very robust housing website on campus that lists, as well as chats of people looking for roommates, students, and we try to do the matchmaking as well and help students as much as possible within our campus community to support each other and host each other if there is a spot here and there, and so on and so forth. And we do have a large network of host families nearby that also work with students. They are not managed by the university, but we do have a list of recommended organizations, host family organizations in the area that we can refer students to if they're interested. But again, SONOR can be a great resource for you when it comes to, if this is a requirement, a priority for you, I do believe that they can guide you through the right universities or the best universities that can guarantee housing for you, or you have a better chance of applying, or if you apply by a certain deadline, you have a better chance of getting into campus housing or any other off-campus housing facilities that are available to you.
Matthew, anything to add?
Yeah, many schools in the United States, including PSU, have priority housing application deadlines. So for us, it's June 1st if you're coming for the fall. If you apply by June 1st for housing, we guarantee housing.
Sounds good. I can just say specifically for all the institutions that we currently work with, and even institutions we have worked with in the past, it's never been an issue with housing. Every single university has a strong network of people assisting students with that. So whether or not they have guaranteed housing or not guaranteed housing, in my opinion, doesn't really matter that much, because every single institution will be able to assist you in finding housing regardless. Similar type prices and anything like that. There are institutions that we work with that have guaranteed housing. But as I said, I really don't think that that's should play a major impact, because every single university will assist in terms of that and have good programs and processes in terms of that, because they understand that you're leaving your home, traveling across the world, you need some sort of support in terms of that. There's two more questions that comes in terms of that, different things here as well. And I can just jump in and then go straight in and answer those things, I guess. And you guys can jump in if you want to add on things. There's a question here from Andy. How would you compare the benefits and downsides by taking, for instance, 1-2 exchange years from masters in Norway or taking the whole masters outside? I feel it wouldn't be smart with COVID in mind, and that I want to work afterwards in Norway. I guess reality is there's a good number of educational options in Norway. So the thing is, for Norwegian students, that's not why you leave the country to study. It's not the lack of opportunity, because there's great universities here with great university structures. So you'll have a lot of different options. So it really comes down to what kind of content of your education you're able to get in a different university in a different country. And I like to talk to students about both the firm elements of your degree, all your, the elements that you're going to bring to a workplace in terms of your knowledge within that field, whether that is computer science, whether it's a film and television program, or regardless of what you do, that kind of all those things that you learn on the technical skills. But it's also the difference between studying back home and studying overseas is all those soft skills that you pick up, that different kind of language, the cultural thing, dealing with people in a different way, the way that the institutions encourage you to be much more vocal in terms of your education. Sometimes that's not the case necessarily in Norway. So you have to look at all these different things and figure out what's the best possible option for me and what will put me in the best possible situation when I start applying for a job. So the reality is that you could find really good options, and the option you could do is do an exchange for a semester or a year, and that could be the perfect way for you, or you want to do a full master course or whatnot. I understand it's difficult, more difficult now with COVID than any time else in the history of this, but I think when we talk to students at this point in time, we have to talk about this as we are moving to a sort of normality, I guess. So the planning at this point in time has to be that we think that you are going to be able to be on campus and have all the advantages of all those soft skills that we're talking about as well, and interacting with students, interacting with professionals, interacting with a totally different set of businesses that in those surrounding areas as well, that you are not able to utilize from Norway. You will be utilizing the same kind of businesses like every other graduate from that specific school, but you're coming back from attending an institution that have connections with other businesses in different parts of the world that makes you stand out. So it's really it's difficult to say in your instance what's the best thing to do. You have to make up your mind, but I think there's some elements there to contemplate in a COVID-free world, especially. And there's a question for you, Matt. If you know anything about housing at James Cook? I'm not going to go into that because Wendy from James Cook University is doing her own webinar in a few weeks. I don't have the date, but you're able to ask her directly or ask any one of us. And I've been to JCU campus a few times, so if you have any questions, I'll be able to, we can have a conversation on whether a Zoom or telephone or anything. I can talk to you about that tomorrow or later in the week if that makes sense. I think there was one extra one. Yes, Hans has a question that's probably related to you, Abby, about personal statements. It's not a really question, it just says personal statement. So I don't think we're going to go into way too depths about that because we've done a webinar about personal statements that's been recorded and it's going to be live on our YouTube channel as well. But, Abby, if you have a few pointers that you want to point out at the very end, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Just to reiterate that the personal statement is a really key part of the UCAS application. If it is to do with an undergraduate course, that is, many universities you will apply to directly in the UK if you're applying to a postgraduate course. It's basically a statement of intent, you know, an elevator pitch to prove why you deserve a place on the course. I would say, you know, we have a link on our website if you want a really in-depth guide. So I'll put a little link in the chat for you. But essentially, you need to prove why you deserve a place on the course, and your academic reference on your application will really back up the information in the personal statement. So that's how your application kind of links together. So yes, I won't go into too much detail as you mentioned already, but yeah, I'll pop a link in there for a personal statement guide, which hopefully will be helpful.
Sounds good. And that's, again, whether it's personal statement, whether it's an essay, whether it's a statement for a specific purpose, like Matt mentioned, if your grades are a little bit on the low side and you want to add some additional information, again, that's one of the things that we will help you with, is trying to maximize your opportunities for different universities and understand the way moving forward to get accepted to different universities as well. I think that was actually all the questions. It took us slightly over the time limit that we set aside, but that's a good thing, I guess. Students and questions. I want to thank you guys for participating, both the students and obviously you guys as our university partners with all the answers. If you want to leave us with a final remark, feel free to do so. If there's anybody who wants to say anything. Besides, thank you, everyone, Matt.
I'm going to put a little plug in here for Australia. Just I want to, I think you're all in a very great situation in Norway down the road to be able to travel, and you've got a lot of funding from your home governments to support that. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity to consider studying in another country. So wherever that be, I think Australia is a great, safe place to be. There's some terrific institutions as well as New Zealand in that part of the world. So I think you should strongly consider those. As a reference tool, the Good Universities Guide is a great resource for you to look at all institutions in Australia and how well they're performing. That's relatable to you and what your goals are. So that's a great resource along with SONOR. From a bond perspective, I'm also doing a bond specific webinar with SONOR on Thursday. So if you do have any specific questions, I'll be elaborating on programs, costs, accommodations, scholarships as well. So if you wanted to join that in, you can get details from SONOR about that. That's this Thursday as well. So thanks very much for the opportunity. It's been terrific, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Anybody else? Final remarks?
I'll just say thank you everyone to participating. Really nice to hear all your questions. And we, you know, also have a live chats with academic departments and the recruitment team at the university. If you know, have any further questions that myself or SONOR can help you with. In addition, you know, that is an extra option at the University of Warwick. And we do have some webinars that SONOR have recorded, so do check them out because there's some really useful information in there.
Matthew, Vanessa?
On my end, just want to thank you for your time. And, you know, as this is a Thanksgiving week, we all have a lot to be thankful for as we end 2020 and hope for a 2021 a lot brighter and with a lot more study abroad opportunities for all of us. And that hope to see you somewhere, Matt, Abby, Matt, on the road, somewhere there. Too. Can't wait to see you again. And all of you campus, have a phenomenal holiday season with your loved ones, and remember to be grateful for every moment we have and all the blessings we also have. Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you for participating today. And I'll say, if you have the opportunity to study abroad, do it, because a lot of people don't. And I've heard also the analogy of the experience of living abroad being compared to taking a potted plant and putting it in the natural soil. Once you study abroad, the roots will grow. You'll never be able to be put back in that pot again. You'll have changed fundamentally, and that's a good thing. It will change your life in more than one way. So please take the opportunity, if you have it, use SONOR as your resource, and we also are here for you. So have a great day, or night rather.
Yeah, midnight here. Leave you guys with a few remarks from my point of view and from Study Outside point of view, Study Outside Norway's point of view. As I said, if you're not already in contact with one of our counselors, please do so. Register on our website. Send me an email. Send any of our counselors an email, so we can start helping you with your future academic planning, to get to know in terms of what kind of GPAs are required, testings required, funding available, scholarships available, all those things, the times, the deadlines, all the things that you need to have in place at this point in time. We can help you set aside and ensure that we have a clear understanding of what's your next move going to be in terms of that. Remember, we're free of charge, so regardless of what you end up doing, that's perfectly fine. All we want is to have successful students, and successful students means students that are able to travel throughout the world, accessing great education and institutions that will cover their needs. So your needs as a student, that's what all we want to do, is try and figure out in tandem with you, have a discussion which universities will be a good fit for you in terms of your program and in terms of your active lifestyle outside of the campus as well. So take charge of that situation. And the final remark that I'm going to say is, make sure that if you're in a situation that you think you might probably potentially want to study abroad, ensure that you apply early. Have an application come in, have a decision, and be in the position that you turn down an institution instead of applying late and have the institution turn down you. That's always a good advice. So whenever you're in that situation, think that this is something that I most likely probably will do. And this year is probably more difficult than anything because of the COVID situation. But be in a position where you apply. If you haven't applied, then all of your chances might be gone. Once the vaccination starts getting throughout the world and all of a sudden July, the world is back to a new normal. And if you start working those angles at that point in time, it might be too late. You might end up losing a semester or even a full year in the worst case. So get in touch, start your planning now, get your applications in. And if you decide not to go, that's perfectly fine as well. It's better to turn down an acceptance to a university than being late and not being able to get an acceptance at all. So that's my final remark. Thank you guys for attending, both students and my university counselors throughout the world. All you have done a brilliant job. If there's any more questions, feel free to email any of us. The emails are on the screen, and we wish you all a good night. So bye-bye from Norway and from other places around the world, I guess.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.